I made a promise, and now I'm delivering on that promise. Don't go away. Hello everyone and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I am Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. Indeed, I promised a second video on making decals in your own home, featuring my newest setup, the Hewlett-Packard 254 DW and the Ghost White toner. So here it is. So why should you listen to me? Well, certainly I'm no expert, but I have printed decals at home in an inkjet printer, a laser printer, on an Alps MD5000, and now on the HP. I've also ordered custom decals from assorted vendors, so I think it would be safe to say I have a grasp of the big picture. I first found out about the HP and the white toner while making my last decal video. I had never heard of that setup before, and at the time, I was using and struggling along with my Alps. I heard negatives on this printing setup, which I will address at length, but it seemed that the positives outweighed the negatives, so I sold my Alps, I ordered the new laser and some Ghost White toner, and haven't looked back. The process is fairly easy. Design your decals, create a white layer, and then with the white toner cartridge installed, print the white undercoat on the clear laser decal paper. After printing the white, swap it out with the black toner, and in a second pass, print the color layer, and you have decals. I personally like to work in Adobe Illustrator, so I'm going to go in Illustrator and just make my decal art. I'm not going to worry about size or anything like that right now. I'm just going to get everything designed and laid out the way I like it. If you look at the words Clark County Fire Department and the blue numbers and things like that, you'll notice they're outlined in black. That's actually a representation of an area that's going to print white. When you're working with this, it's important to keep track of what is black and what is white. Once I'm happy with how all of the images look, I can then go ahead and get measurements from my project and get everything to scale and finalize everything so it's going to be just right. When I'm done, I'll save the file and then I'll import it into Adobe Photoshop. I now have the artwork imported into a high-resolution file in Adobe Photoshop. This is the color layer, and I'll make a second layer which will be the white layer. In the color layer, I can select all of the transparent background, invert that selection, then I can go to the white layer. Once in the white layer, I will contract the selection by about 4 pixels, and then I can go ahead and fill that with black. So now I have all of my decals aligned, scaled, and ready to go, and I also have a black layer as well. I can now save this file and get ready to print it. So before I start printing, I will head over and prepare the printer. At the printer, I'm going to go ahead and insert a sheet of decal paper. I use this paper I get from a company called Sunnyscopa, and a link will be below. It's important when you put the decal paper in to understand the orientation of the paper in the paper tray so that you can repeat it with the paper after it goes through its first pass. Once the paper is in, now I can go ahead and swap out the black toner for the ghost white toner. I simply open up the toner tray, get out my ghost white toner, and swap it in. In addition to being filled with white toner, the ghost cartridge is labeled so that the printer will think it is a black cartridge. With the cartridge in, I'll slide the tray back in, close the front door, and the printer will go through a little setup process. Once the printer is ready to go, I can go to my computer and send it the first print, which is the black layer. An important note here is to make sure that your paper selection is for transparency. This allows the toner a little bit extra time to dry. It may be a little difficult to see, but here you have the sheet filled with all of the art printed in white. Now I can reload the paper into the paper tray, and this is why I mentioned the orientation. You have to make sure that the paper is going to feed through the printer the same way it did the first time. So we'll put the paper back into the paper tray, and then we can swap out the ink cartridges. I'll take the ghost white toner out, I'll put the black toner back in, let the printer go through its process, and then we can print the color layer. With everything ready, I can now go ahead and send the color layer job to the printer and just wait for it to come out and see what we have done. And here you have it, an entire sheet of water slide decals ready to be applied to your project. So why did I swap from the Alps to the HP? Well, there are several reasons. The Alps is outdated and out of production. It has no support and can be very difficult to use. The smallest variable can cause your prints to fail. Since the printers are out of production, they're an expensive proposition to boot. I was able to sell my Alps, its ribbons, and the junky PC I used to drive the printer, buy the HP, and had some coin to spare. For me, on my Mac, with the newest versions of Illustrator and Photoshop, it was virtually impossible to work with the Alps, and in fact it was so difficult I would avoid using it whenever I could. Having printed decals on a laser printer, I was already familiar with the basic concept, and I enjoyed the massively better resolution as compared to what you would get on the Alps. Here's an image of a decal I printed on the Alps, and you can see just how poor the resolution actually is. I also loved the idea of being able to use the newest tech and the newest apps to create and print my decals. So let's be perfectly clear about what I like and don't like about the HP setup. Likes include great resolution on my prints, far exceeding what I could get with the Alps. I love the wireless connectivity and the ability to print right from my Mac through my graphics software. It's so much easier and allows me to literally print at the drop of a dime. The HP printer really is just a color laser. So it can actually serve double duty as your day-to-day printer in your home if you choose. The prints from the HP are bright and colorful. The white from the Ghost Toner is very opaque. And I just love not having to overcoat the decals, something you still needed to do with the Alps, as the decals that came out could be a bit fragile. Price-wise, while the setup isn't cheap, it is one of the most affordable ways to print decals at your home currently available. You can get printers for around $300 refurbished, and I'll put a link for those below. And you can also get the Ghost White Toner. It runs about another $300. So, what drawbacks does the HP setup have? Well, I miss being able to print foils like the Alps can. But the single biggest drawback is the issue HP has with registering the white layer and the color layer. This is almost a deal breaker, but for me, not quite. The Alps pulls the paper in and holds it in registration until the entire print is done. So, it can align the white and the color very accurately. The HP prints the layers in two completely separate passes, releasing the paper after each pass. This can really give you registration nightmares. Here we can see a perfect print. You can't even tell there's an underlying white layer because alignment is 100% perfect. Assume, however, the alignment is a bit off. You can see here in the upper left corner of the graphic, the base layer is poking out. It's colored here so you can see it, but it would be white. In the lower right side, you can see part of the color layer that doesn't get an underlay. This happens on virtually every two-pass print with the HP to some extent or another. So, should you run away? In my opinion, no. Unless you can drop in excess of $3,000 on a higher end printer, and I can't. So, what is the answer? First, trapping. Trapping is a very common thing in printing to fight registration issues. Essentially, you make the white layer ever so slightly smaller, say between 2 and 4 pixels, and this way, if the registration is off by that margin, you won't readily be able to notice the issue. Here we see a perfectly aligned print with a trapped undercoat. Imagine now, again, that the registration is slightly off. Here you can see that even with the registration off, the decal would look perfect because the trapping accounts for the slop in the registration. So is this the end of the problem? Sadly, no. The registration issue gets worse and worse as the decals get smaller and smaller. So, for diecast restoration, 1/25th scale models, and other things along those lines, even a 4-pixel adjustment may not be enough. Here is my current workaround, short of me winning the lottery and being able to buy an expensive, high-end printer. What I do is I print 3 versions of decals when I print. I print a full layered set of decals with a trapped base. I also print a color version with no white base layer. And then finally, I print just the trapped white layer. If the fully printed decals come out great, and the registration is perfect, I can use those. But if not, I have a backup of being able to layer the white layer and the color layer decals on top of each other. This allows me complete control of the registration after the printing. You've already seen me do this in my Hummer Gasser video where I layered the decals, and I'm also doing it on the American LaFrance fire engine I'm building. This solves that registration issue at the cost of some extra work and a little bit of the extra decal paper, but it works great for me. Is it an ideal solution? Certainly not. but it'll just have to do until we have a printer that we can get affordably and has the tech that allows the printer to hold great registration and can use the Ghost White toner. Clearly, the HP and the Ghost White toner isn't the perfect solution for home decal printing, but in my humble opinion, the negatives are far outweighed by the strengths of the system, and this is the best, in fact, the only solution for me at this time. At the end of the day, you can pull off some very nice decals right at home, allowing you to tweak things to perfection and elevating your builds to an entirely different level. Using special transfer papers, you can even make full-color heat transfers for t-shirts, which is a heck of a nice additional feature, but it's one we'll talk about on another day. I'll be putting links for all of the stuff I used here below, and I'll look forward to the armada of questions I'm expecting. I hope you liked this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up and click subscribe. Be sure to click the notification bell so you'll be alerted anytime I release a new video. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, if you're unhappy, it's because you are not in alignment with yourself, not because of what anyone else is doing. This is Paul from Fat Guy Productions. Till next time, be good.